Key, Tom McCabe, and I think that's it at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Any declarations of interest? No declarations of interest. Minutes of the meeting held on the 30th of September. Accurate record. We're okay with that? Very good. So now we move on to item 4. Got Dan Goodwin in the room. So this is the item where we have an opportunity to showcase projects that we have invested in during the lifetime of the partnership, and the benefits that brings to communities around the Greater Norwich area, and of course obviously across Norfolk as well. So Dan, welcome. Good to see you, and you're going to tell us about the Aylsham Sports Hub.
Thank you. Yes, welcome to you all. Good afternoon. I'm just going to sort out sharing my screen. I'm just going to make sure I'm sharing the right part of it. Let's get that ready. This is where it wants to show the wrong one. There you go. Can you see the slide? Yep. Lovely job. So for those that I haven't met before, my name is Dan Goodwin. I'm the Communities Manager at Broadland and South Norfolk Councils. I have been involved with this project for quite a long time, along with a few others, and I'm here to give you a bit of an update of where we are with the Aylsham Sports Hub, which is Project GP69. So this particular element of the project and the bid that was funded for is for the provision of a full-size 3G pitch and 2 changing rooms plus referees changing as part of the wider Aylsham Sports Hub at Aylsham High School. This came about, the school were in receipt of a significant amount of Section 106 money, mostly from the Bere Meadows development in Aylsham, around £1.5 million. And they took the decision that they really wanted to improve their existing sports facilities, develop them further, and more importantly, make them accessible to the community. They're in a privileged position that the way the development went, the land allowed them to build onto the edge of their school, or to develop the facilities on the edge of the school. Their sports facilities were already quite conveniently placed on the edge of the school, and there was a car park provided for the school alongside that, which gave them the opportunity to improve these facilities and give access that's separate to the school site, so that it could be used without interfering with pupil movement and things like that, which was part of the plan. So this particular element, and the element that was funded, the 3G pitch, the total cost came in at just under £1 million, and they were awarded from the fund £475,000. This was part of the school's kind of recognition that they want to really look to improve and develop that service for their community, and you can see from their branding there that they've thought that through. To give an idea of where we are at the moment and where the school have come to, their first phase was to develop their swimming pool. So they had a very old swimming pool, of which I tried to find some photos of, but unfortunately we can't find any anywhere. But if you can imagine any of the classic 50s and 60s built swimming pools that are now long past their use and quite tired, with a single sin roof that probably lets more cold in than it keeps heat out, keeps heat in, that's the kind of pool that you had. They used their own investment and a tranche of money from the Section 106 to develop that and turn it into what is quite a high standard community pool, and open it up to community memberships. So they have a current membership of 363, and they provide public access of over 50 hours per week during term time and 70 hours per week during holidays. And they also have a swim schools running out of there that have around about 160 children attending. So they've really opened that up and made the maximum use of that pool outside of school hours. They've also managed to condense their term time programming to a reduced timetable in the course of the day as well, so they can move things a little around and run classes in the early hours and the later part of the afternoon, where without encroaching within the school timetable. That worked really well. They added on to their existing facilities within the sports hall, which they offer a range of sports through there that they lease out to the community. And this particular bit was to develop the 3G pitch. I've got some photos later on that show it, but on the land that's adjacent to the car park at Aylsham High, it was to redevelop and rebuild there. They had a small, low-level multi-use pitch, which was in quite a state of disarray and was struggling a little bit. It was quite small. This was to replace that and to improve it. And it's a full 3G pitch with a viewing area, and it was completed on the 1st of September last year. Unfortunately, it wasn't able to open straight away due to the various COVID restrictions at the time. So they kind of opened, had a soft launch, managed to get some groups involved, and then had to close again as we came into December time, and then reopened again in the early parts of the new year as the restrictions ebbed and flowed and allowed. It's multi-sports. It is recognised to have usage for football, hockey, rugby, and athletics training, though its primary use is football. It can allow 111v11 size or the multiple variations you can see on your screen. One of the benefits for this place is it's approved as an Anglian combination venue. So the Anglian Combination League can use it for their league games. It is also one of only 8 pitches county-wide to be approved by both the FA and FIFA as meeting their standards, which is only 8 pitches is not bad, I would say. It's officially accredited. And currently has over 20 clubs and 50 different teams using the pitch since its opening. So it's already doing quite well. It's picking up a real demand in an area where there wasn't a pitch like that. The nearest one probably is the one in Horsford at the Nest, or you're having to go up to the kind of onto the borders on the coast to pick up a nearer pitch. There aren't many around that way. It's getting around to over 700 users per week, and it's around about 85% capacity at peak times now. It's a little bit lower off peak. It's only about 40%, though the school is working with local clubs and local teams with a view to some of them making it their home ground from next season, which will then really increase that weekend usage. I'll pop these up. I won't talk you through them. You can read them for yourself, but there's some feedback from users, which has been really positive. A lot of the clubs based out that way don't have the training facilities, particularly in the winter, where they can continue playing and keep developing as a side. I think Buxton's is quite interesting that it really has allowed them to develop as a team so that they're not tailing off as the dark nights get darker and as it gets colder, and that's already paying off on their league games and allowing them to push through and develop as a standard. I know they as a club are looking to really push forward and develop themselves and their own facilities with a view to becoming more established locally, and this is already helping to motivate them and to help drive them on, and that availability locally is really working with them. Wroxham FC Juniors as well have given something. A little aside that I'll add at this point is when we first put the proposals together and the school were first keen to do this and the bids were going in, Aylsham Town Football Club and the FA had some concerns over the provision of a 3G pitch at the school because they had their own aspirations to do so within the club, and there were some discussions around that, and the club at one point kind of threatened to take away the use and said that they wouldn't actively use this pitch at all. They're actually now regular bookers. Now it's there, they are utilising it, and it's helping relieve some of the pressure that they've got at their club. So it's kind of worked out quite nicely, which is what everyone hoped for in the early days, really, but it's worked out quite nicely. But it's great to see that they're getting such good support and that it's providing a real use for the community. On to the next steps where they are currently. So the pitch is developed, it is open, it is live, it is being used. Part of the funding was to build changing rooms and referee changing alongside it. That was put back to a second phase to go into the kind of the grander plans of the sports hub. So the sports hub itself was part of 3 phases. The initial was to do the swimming pool, then to do onto the 3G pitch, and then they want to use some more of the 106 money or the remaining 106 money with a view to building a kind of sports facility that houses a gym, changing and studio spaces alongside a community cafe. The aim is to put the changing rooms and referee area within that space because that maximises the use of the land and reduces the cost by putting things together. There is also adequate level training and excellent level changing rooms attached to the sports hall currently, which is why they've been able to get their FA and FIFA accreditation as it stands, but this would help develop it and allow for extra capacity. The funding from the GNGB and the 106 money that they stand will build those changing rooms, and that's due to take place in the next year or so. They're kind of at a decision-making stage now with the rest of it. There's a real aspiration to complete the job and to finish the work. Unfortunately, as I think probably most projects have seen, the rather heavy spiralling costs of material and construction is making things quite difficult to do. Well, projects that were 2 million 5 years ago, 4 years ago, are now kind of costing an extra 1.5, something like that. There's a real jump on that. So the school are really trying to take control of that and make clear decisions so that they can deliver on the projects they're funded to do. They can deliver for the community, but also they're not wasting money. So they're looking at a potential 2-stage process currently. The changing rooms in the area will be built. They would like to, at the same time, build in the 40-station gym and the community cafe. If they can pull all of that together, that maximises their income and their offer to the community whilst minimising risks to themselves, and also allows for the need. The studio spaces would be an ideal addition to the hub, but at the same time they have some current space within the school itself that they can utilise and make maximum use of. So they're kind of looking at that at the moment. Realistically, in terms of the costs, it has added up quite a little. To finish off with the gym and the changing and the cafe is likely to cost in total just a little bit under 1.5 million. They've got 3/4 currently in reserves and within their own abilities, and they're looking at funding opportunities beyond that, which we're supporting at the council as well, and we're looking to help them find different means within there. To do the whole project, to do the studio as well, you're looking at an extra 1.5 million on top of that, which really does spiral it. So I think the model of offering the 2-stage makes good sense, and then they can utilise the income that's coming into it. One of the things I forgot to mention earlier on is that the sports hub has kind of been hived off as charitable status of its own, which means that any income coming into it and any profit made by it is reinvested within the sports hub, or is used to enhance the education opportunities across Aylsham and other local community groups. So it's very much about reinvesting in themselves. And by building these and taking on the extra business, of which their business model is working so far, it is turning a return for them, they can reinvest back in. And if they need to, with things like the studio, they can put it further down the line and hopefully do it. They're really working on that at the moment. One of the things I think the school would particularly benefit from and would like to ask for support for is general influence and support on this. I think they're doing a lot of the hard work to look out at funding opportunities and streams. We've had an issue, and I'm going to speak a little candidly here, if I may. Sport England traditionally would be the organisation you would go to kind of champion these things and to ask for funding and ask to give advice on the matter. They've restructured and changed their kind of format over the last few years, and they no longer have regional representatives in the way they used to. So they can be quite difficult to communicate with, and they don't seem to have the aspirations to want to work in that level anymore. And we're finding that that's both us as a council with other projects and the school are finding Sport England quite difficult to engage with and kind of champion. So we're looking at other opportunities now and other organisations, and particularly those that have influence, that can help support the school look for other avenues of funding and help kind of champion what is an excellent cause. I mean, according to the Sport England strategies, this would be a model of excellence, really, taking school facilities that already has excellent sports facilities, opening them up to their community outside of school hours and even inside school hours where possible at a low cost and making it available. It's kind of the gold standard model of how you deliver services in a rural area where you don't have a commercial entity. But the school are definitely challenged slightly with kind of being able to champion that more. And they're hugely grateful for all the support that the Greater Norwich Growth Board have provided so far, and hopefully continue to do so. So in summary, they are very thankful for that. You've got some photos there of the 3G pitch being developed and put into place, and a picture of the sports hub, which is the shell around what was the old school pool. And if you've ever visited the old one, it looks very different now, you can see. If you are interested in going out to have a look, or if you think you'd like to meet with the business director there and talk some more about opportunities, please do get in contact. I can provide contacts after the meeting and really kind of support that and encourage you to go along, because it's a fantastic facility that looks very professional and modern and is really well used. Thank you for your time.
So thanks very much, Dan. If you want to take your presentation down, we'll pick up any discussion points. So I think we'd want to record our thanks for the presentation, but also the ambition of the school and the sports hub and what's been achieved. That's really impressive. But Dan has highlighted a number of issues in terms of their ambition moving forward, and to use our influence to enable further progress to be made as part of the planning going forward. Has anybody got any comments or observations, questions they would like to make or ask? Are we happy to put an action point in? Oh yes, Sean.
Thank you, Chairman.
Oh, you've got your hand up as well, have you? Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't know if you could see the hands. As you say, both myself and Andrew have got us up. I'd just like to thank Dan for his presentation. Thank you for taking us through that. That's excellent to see the facility now come forward and to be used. The accreditations that it's got, it will make such a difference in the locality. And I know that it's very exciting for the people around the area to make use of these facilities and to take it forward. It'd be interesting to see how the project now progresses and which pieces do get finished off or what compromises are made. But I think overall, as it stands at this point in time, it is an excellent facility and it's something that I'm really pleased we've been able to support through the growth board in this way. So thank you, Dan, for taking us through that, and thank you everybody else for supporting delivering of this project. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. Andrew?
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Nice to see you again. We've seen each other for a while. The 3G pictures that you mentioned, the one at the Nest, there's also one at Brundle been put together as well, which you probably know about, which the G&GB have put some money into too. But I suppose the issue for me is the next stage of this. There's some quite heavy funding requirement there. So I don't know what is being done, how that can be facilitated, because it is quite substantial in relation to the actual pitch.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the pitch itself obviously won't cost any more. It's the gym facility. So they've got $750,000 currently sitting in their accounts to be used on the next stage of development. They're looking for at least 700,000 more realistically, which is obviously substantial. It's hard to say. Once upon a time, Sport England was one of the big investors in projects like this, and it was that large scale kind of development. They're currently very focused on COVID recovery, understandably, and we'll be looking to amend that, I think, come the new financial year. So I think that would be a good time to be having those discussions, and we're engaged with Active Norfolk and the strategic directors there to try and help with that, because I think that may be a source. But yeah, I'm not 100% sure where we're finding extra bits from, so it'd be useful to say there's been some early, very tentative discussions with the local enterprise partnership, and I think that would be useful to follow up. I think at a low officer level there's been discussions, but it would be useful for kind of more senior members to perhaps become aware of the project and become involved. I know Chris isn't here today as he sent his apologies, but it would be great if they could have kind of an involvement and discussion, because they might be able to guide and offer some support as well as to where potential opportunities could be, because it's not just a case of funding a project that will then require further money down the year. They are self-sustaining projects. They are ones that will invest in themselves, that will make profit, that actually have a business operational method. So in theory, that whilst there is a need for support in the early stages, and the school trust have supported it themselves, they've put in money, and they may well show a willingness to put further support in. But I think it's that level of support that can be there, isn't it?
Okay. Any other comments on this? So I think we should make an action point to see what we can do to help in terms of our networks and our influence to help with the funding of the next phase of the work, because it's a really impressive project, and do pass on our congratulations to the school for all the work they've done with partners to get this far. Very, very enterprising. Dan, thank you very much.
Thank you
for your time and excellent presentation.
Thanks very much.
Okay, so let's go on to what I think is a substantive item for this afternoon, which is the Greater Norwich Joint 5-Year Infrastructure Investment Plan draft document. And over to you, Phil.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, obviously the report is in front of you. There's 3 key elements to the report and its appendices, which then leads to 4 recommendations. The 3 key elements in the paper are firstly the 5-year infrastructure investment plan, secondly the annual growth programme, and then thirdly the proposed drawdown of £6.733 million for Long Stratton bypass. I'll go through each of those 3 elements and then lead to the recommendations. So with regard to the proposed 5-year infrastructure investment plan, members will be familiar with the document, so I don't intend to go through it in detail. Page 24 of the document, which is page 38 of the overall papers, is the key table, and it identifies, amongst other things, a large forecasted amount of circa £14 million of non-committed funds for 22-23. It should also be noted that the programme is still ring-fenced to the 4 pre-agreed thematic areas of transport, of education, of green infrastructure, and of communities, and that will continue to be the case until a review is undertaken. Members are also drawn, and Grace was very keen that I pointed out that there's a map now at page 47, which identifies where funding has gone and is going in as part of the programme. The annual growth programme sets out the projects to receive funding for 22-23. Those projects are detailed in Appendix A, which is on page 43 of your papers. Again, you'll be familiar with that process, and I'm not going to go through those in detail, but we can obviously pick up if there's any questions about those. As a result of those 2 points, recommendations 1 and 2 ask the board to approve both the 5-year infrastructure investment plan and the annual growth programme prior to the respective partners' cabinets and councils considering them later in February. With regard to the Long Stratton bypass, the paper proposes the drawdown of £6.733 million borrowing from the City Deal borrowing facility. The draft loan agreement is at Appendix E of the papers, and it effectively replicates the loan agreement that was used for Broadland Northway. The forecasted annual repayment from taken out of the infrastructure investment fund is at this point in time £348,000 per annum, which is shown in line 9 of the 5-year infrastructure investment plan on page 38. Recommendations, both 3 and 4, ask that the board firstly agree the loan agreement, and that then delegated authority is sought for the Greater Norwich Growth Board and the respective Section 151 officers to sign the agreement under the direction of the County Council as the accountable body, and that process is set out in paragraph 3.7 of the paper. I'll end there, Chair, but I'm happy to take any questions, or probably more appropriately direct them to Grace, who knows far more than I do.
Okay, and Phil, thank you very much. And it is a welcome addition to have a map showing just what investment has taken place through the work of the partnership over the last several years. Yeah, if people could put their hands up, as John is doing, because I'm not sure that I'm seeing the yellow hands on my screen. So, John, over to you.
Yes, thanks very much. Yeah, indeed, I'd endorse that comment. It's nice to see on a map. It makes it much more real, much better than the sort of numbers and spreadsheets approach. I'd also like to thank Grace and the team very much for the first time giving us better sight on page 24, if you like, of the forward cash flow funding. So well done. I think that's really, really good there. That's 24 of the, oh God, or was it, I can't remember, well, it's or 24, or it's 38 of the PDF, if that makes sense, if you're trying to find it on your Word thing there. So that's really good. Now, so I've got 2 questions, really. First of all, is the forecast silver receipt taking into account any diminution that may be suffered as a result to the board, that is, of money which otherwise would come to us, is going to parishes as part of a neighbourhood plan? You know, there's a very large development that's likely to see 25% of the finance going to a town council rather than to us. So I think a little bit of sensitivity around that, just have a clarification. In other words, is the cumulative 2026 number going to be 81 million, or could it be materially less than that? I think that's the first point. And then I noticed there's an apparent surplus deficit, but the previous item at Aylsham showed just how expensive it is to go building nowadays. And I wonder whether we'd benchmarked some of the costs and other things in the programme. I know there's not a lot there, but are we going to have to sort of start thinking about getting less bang for our buck as a result of just general increases in inflation for materials and other stuff? So a couple of questions, but well done for that. I think that's a really good start, and for once we can see, where the headroom is. So brilliant.
Yeah, thank you for that, John, and we'll minute those thanks, which is an excellent report. A lot of hard work gone into this. Phil, do you want to pick up at least one of the points or both?
Yeah, very happy to. Yeah, I mean, just as a matter of course, I would reiterate the thanks to Grace and Ruth and the team. They do an incredible work. They've made it a much more robust process over a number of years. So thank you again. Yes, John, in terms of this table, this is what is passed into the pooled pot, and therefore it is after what goes to the neighbourhoods, the parish and town councils. So this is assuming that money has already been passed of the 15 or 25%, and this is what is in the pooled SIL pot.
Yeah, I think, but my point was, have we anticipated those parishes that are undergoing neighbourhood plans and are likely to be adopted? I think that was really the thrust. Are we? Because looking forward, there's a reasonable expectation that, particularly in South Norfolk, a number of parishes will get their parish plans adopted. So what's the effect of that?
Yeah, my apologies. I misunderstood your question, in which case I will turn to Grace just to see if that is included in the forecast. Sorry, Grace.
The calculation is done by the district officers themselves, so I believe that they'll be taken into account the time frame of any expected to be made neighbourhood plans within their calculations. But we do update the forecast every 6 months for that reason. There are so many sort of moving parts, so I can't say, if there's a specific one you'd like me to check on, I can do so and go back and check. But as Phil said, the 5% administration, either the 15 or the 25% is actually considered on a site-by-site basis, depending on at what stage they are with neighbourhood plans. So if they know that one is forthcoming in the next 12 months, I would expect them to have considered the fact that the full amount would be taken out before it came to us.
And if I may just follow up on that, please, Chairman, because I know Halston, for example, in the draft local plan, there may be possibly 350 houses coming. That approximates to 4 million total SIL, of which 1 million would go to the parish. So we're not talking about inconsequential sums of money. And I just wondered whether it might help our understanding and also help us with the narrative with some of our larger settlements, that this stuff is for strategic use. It's not just for new curtains or bowls mats for the village hall, because I've seen that happen. And I just wonder whether it would help understanding if we had an additional line that, whilst it's not within our control, but it may well be that it gives us opportunities to have a more substantial conversation with parishes in general if we do understand the apportionment. I'm just asking for an answer, and I'm grateful for what we've gone so far. But as we think of the future, there are some big numbers coming, and it would help us.
Yeah, helpful, interesting line, John. Phil?
I hesitate to, and I think it's really useful information. I wonder, and I'm looking at my leader, whether or not that is something that we can actually circulate at the district level, at both Broadland and South Norfolk level, whether it needs to come into this forum and whether it would add to the strategic discussions in this forum. I'm happy to be led either way.
Well, at the end of the day, it's infrastructure is infrastructure, and how we encourage all participants. We don't separate out the bit the county spends from the bits the district spend. It's one pot. And the man in the street is entitled to rank parish SIL as it is district or county or in fact any other SIL, Just a suggestion.
Yeah. Grace?
So the information about how much is actually taken away in Neighbourhood Sale and is allocated to parishes is actually published every year in your infrastructure funding statements as your individual districts. It's not something we've included in the 5-year plan because it's not within your control, your decision making. It's money that we don't have any sort of say over. It is information that I can gather if you would prefer it to be added, but as I say, it hasn't sat there previously, but it is always published on an annual basis through your districts.
Sean, you want to come in?
Yeah, I think Grace has just said what I was going to say. It is reported already and it is available as information. So maybe it could just be appendix to the document at some point so that we're aware of it as it comes forward. The other question I was going to ask was through COVID, there's been delay in seal payment. And I wondered if the cash flow on page 24 or 38, depending on which way you look at it, that table indicates that delay in payment or whether that's still as it was. I don't know if that's that one for you, Grace.
Yeah, so anyone who had an agreement to actually delay their payment have already paid. The delayed due. It was only actually a very short period of time of which they actually, I think it was the first lockdown that the industry was allowed to, under certain circumstances, delay their seal payment. But yeah, they've all now come in, and we actually saw a jump this year, quite considerable jump of income, because a number of we don't know the full extent, but we believe it's mainly because a couple of large schemes actually brought forward their delivery sooner and actually paid up front in advance rather than over a phased period. So they paid already sooner than we were originally, we were forecasting even just 6 months ago. So it's been a very strange year. We don't actually, it's very unusual times, and we're not sure what's going to happen at all next year. Yeah, there is no one outstanding. There's nothing else waiting to be paid that should have been paid because of the COVID delays.
No, thank you for confirming that.
Okay. Any other questions, comments about the report? Full of a lot of goodies. No. So the discussion around the money that goes down to particular settlements and communities, I think the discussion sort of settled around maybe having for information appendices, just outlining what that is in as a quantum amount, which I think would be of interest. That's not difficult to pull together, I take it. No? Okay. So let's put that down as something, as the action point coming out of that. So if I'm able then to go to the recommendations, which are on the first page of the report, page 9, are we happy to agree those 4 recommendations? Okay. Very good. So let's go on to the, and thank you, and again, thank you very much. A very significant amount of work, really clearly laid out, and thanks to Grace and Ruth and all involved in bringing this to our meeting. So item 6 is the Greater Norwich Green Infrastructure Strategy Delivery Plan. That's page 67, and Vince has joined us to present the report. Vince, over to you.
Thank you, Chairman, and ably supported by Charlotte from the District Council, who will answer any of the detailed questions that might come up. Essentially, the strategy will be an opportunities map. It's locating where greenways enhancements and new green space is needed. The work will review existing spatial data, which has already been gathered, and a gaps analysis has identified where the strategy map needs to show. The proposal confirms that we should use national data sets where possible, and the proposal lists all of the sources for that information. Additionally, there may well be some surveys and ground truthing needed. The work is effectively broken down into 3 stages with a sign-off before progressing to the next stage. The first 2 stages build up the data and the map, and the third analyses the information. Targets will then be set for delivering the green infrastructure strategy and the development of the plan, of the delivery plan, which will be monitored and reviewed. And a working group will oversee the contract drawn from the local authorities plus Natural England. The work's going to be delivered in partnership with the UEA, and the recommendations to you today are to input into the scoping documents that's there if there's anything you think is missing or needs to be added, to agree that we go ahead and deliver the strategy and the plan, and to delegate to the IDB to manage the project subject to agreed funding. Thank you, Alan. I hope that's a good enough introduction.
Yes, thanks very much, Vince. I think this is a really important and valuable piece of work. Ties in with some of sort of active Norfolk strategies, and green credentials are part of the planet. And your point in the report about the Environment Act as well, highly relevant to legislative change. John, you had your hand up.
Yeah, there are certain designated Natura sites where we're having to do some GRAMS work, the Green Infrastructure Recreational Avoidance Mitigation Strategy, for those people not in the know, which isn't necessarily about total visitors, but it's about the additional marginal visitors from those occupiers of new homes, as opposed to existing. I think all authorities in Norfolk have agreed that we're having sort of established a quantum of a tariff at 185 quid, that we're going to go into a review. If we're doing this piece of work for Greater Norwich, I just think it's really going to be quite important we see if, and it's not all sites will be on this special designation, Natura 2000 designation, but where we have a Natura site designation, I think that will probably assist members apply the GRAMS tariff as and when it builds up into a pot big enough to dispose of. So let's not do the work twice. If we're going to do this work anyway, I think it'd be a useful contribution to kill two birds with one stone. Vince, are you aware of the GRAMS work?
I'm not. Charlotte may well be, and if we're
well,
not,
Ninan Zhu is the expert on this at County Hall, but Graham Nelson, I think, knows a little bit about it too.
in that case, Matt Tracy may well.
I think there's many of us on the call are familiar with GRAM's work. We've lived it for many reasons, one way or another. I mean, from my perspective, the green infrastructure, recreational avoidance mitigation, specific sites, specific legislative background, and a programme of action is needed to effectively mean that we take steps to ensure that across that wider area, across all of Norfolk, we make sure that because of the growth going on across the county, that doesn't harm those areas. And we've yet to work through the detailed plan of action about what we're going to do with that pot of money that the tariff is there to address. The green infrastructure strategy and the associated delivery plan that's coming forward is a slightly broader thing. It is related, because I think the key point about the green infrastructure strategy, if you get your local green infrastructure strategy right, including the connectivity between where populations are and where the green infrastructure opportunities are, you've intuitively minimized the pressure on some of those honeypot locations. So for instance, if you can, through the Whitlingham Bridges and Links project, effectively improve the access between many people within the city and, for instance, Whitlingham Country Park, you've opened up far more local green infrastructure to serve populations. And at that point, as soon as people are able to enjoy green infrastructure locally, they're far less likely to jump in their car and go to some of those honeypot locations, in particular in around the Broads or the coast, that are protected by those higher order Natura 2000 designations. So there is a relationship between the two at that level, but I think one doesn't negate the value of doing the other. It's about joining up the evidence when you've got it to ensure it works.
I think that was my point. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, John. Charlotte, did you want to make any points at all?
No, I don't think so. I think everything else is probably covered in the report. Thank you.
Okay. Sean, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Alan. Yeah, it's just a really for clarity on what we're being asked to agree today, because if I'm reading through the recommendations correctly, the fundamental part here is about the scoping element for the strategy, but what we're also agreeing is the actual strategy itself and the delivery plan, which neither we've seen at this point in time. Or am I missing something? Is there not a step here where that needs to come back to us to see before we agree to that?
You're actually agreeing that we'll do it, not that we'll produce it, not that it's ready now.
Okay, so recommendation 2 then, where it says about to agree the infrastructure strategy and delivery plan, is actually, when it says to be delivered, it means deliver the plan.
Yes.
Rather than actually deliver what's in the plan.
It might just remove confusion if we change the word delivered for produced, which I think is
that works. Yeah, thanks, Graham. That makes sense to me.
Right. Okay. Yeah, we're happy with that amendment. Recommendation. Yeah, that seems common sense. So it covers Sean's point. Thanks for raising that, Sean. Any other comments that anybody would like to make? Okay, with the amendment to small amendment to the recommendations, are we happy to agree the report? Okay, hands up. Right, that's us done for this afternoon. I think Broadland get the prize for the most festive backdrop. So well done, Sean. Out of the Christmas is coming, you've just reminded us. Anyway,
Isn't there one for the most patriotic background?
I was about to say, John, but your patriotism is without question, so needs no comment. So thank you very much. I think a really good day's work. I mean, we will certainly in Norwich be publicising, and I think we've got press release already worked up around the benefits of the partnership and the investments across the area. And it's just I think we've now got a very good narrative, and particularly with the map and other presentations that we've had over this period of just how beneficial and diverse the range of investments are across our communities, and that certainly confirms how important this joint partnership and the innovative way that we pulled our SIL, and how that's benefited across our sort of local authority and community landscape. Okay, so I'm sure I'll see some of you between now and Christmas, but if I don't, all the very best for Christmas, and all the very best to all of us for 2022. Okay.